So there's the nationalistic OCGFC, and then there's the a-national OCGFC. The a-national OCGFC is sort of represented by organizations like BlackRock or Vanguard or State Street, these asset management companies, a lot of tech firms, banks, and so forth. These are going to be a-national developers, real estate developers, as I say, tech firms, and so on. Nationalistic is the original Western OCGFC. That's the original one, because they came through the military-industrial complex. They rose through the military-industrial complex and through the deregulation inside of America that led to the rise of corporate power, the ascendancy of corporate power, until corporate power within America transcended the power of the American government. But they're still tied to Western, or specifically to American domination. They still have an interest in American domination. Understand also, when I say that they're nationalistic, it doesn't mean that they care about their nation in terms of their people. They never did care about the American people, and they don't care about the American people now, but they care about American, specifically American-centric world order. Okay. The a-national OCGFC not only are not interested in maintaining an American-centric world order, they're against it. Because of the fact that that America has never been able to, internationally, America's only way for driving their economy is to disrupt everyone. Everywhere they go, they break things. That's how they have ran their economy since at least the 1940s, 1950s. Now, if you're an a-national owner and control of global financialized capital, and you have global interests, you have international interests, and like, for example, now they have an interest in stabilizing the Middle East, well, that's completely anathema to the military-industrial complex. The whole model has been to destabilize the Middle East for my whole lifetime, my mother's lifetime. Now that's changing. Right. And so they actually want America sidelined. The a-national OCGFC want America sidelined. They want America isolated because you don't know how to play with others. You don't know how to cooperate with others. You're not a team player. You only ever want to destabilize and ruin everyone else's countries and everyone else's economies. That's not going to work anymore. And one of the reasons why that's not going to work anymore is because you all don't have babies. But quite frankly, Europe and America and the West generally, you have failed at the most fundamental duty as a human being to procreate, to keep your people going. You have failed to do that. So now you're not producing enough workers or consumers to fill the needs. That doesn't mean that, for example, that the a-national OCGFC suddenly developed a conscience and suddenly developed a great interest in the people of the global South, and now all of a sudden they really like Muslim people and black and brown people, so-called. No, they still don't like anybody. Yeah. But you have people. Yes. That's the difference. You have people. You have a robust demographics. You have robust birth rates. You're producing humans. So inevitably, the economy has to shift to where people are. Yeah. You can't have an economy without people. So the economy is shifting to where people are. And that's a necessity. And America doesn't have, it's too entrenched in their model is not adaptable. The model for their domestic economy is not adaptable. They have depended for decades on destroying everyone else. Well, that's not going to work anymore. That doesn't work moving forward. So the a-national OCGFC want to see America sidelined. They want to see them isolated. And that's what you're seeing under Trump. You were seeing it already under Biden. It's been moving anyway in this direction. Trump is accelerating that. The fact that power is disproportionately in the private sector in the West and not in the governmental sector, not in the public sector. The private sector operates according to very binary, very simple, very straightforward black and white prioritization. What makes money is what is right. And the good news about that is that you decide what makes money. As a population, you decide. You're the market. You're the consumers. You decide what makes money. You decide whether a company is going to be rewarded or whether it's going to be punished or whether it's going to be ignored, whether you're going to be indifferent. And for example, we've seen over the last 2 years, I think the BDS movement has been extremely successful. I've talked about before with the protests, the marches and the protests and whatnot for Gaza. I think that most of the people who are participating in those protests expect something else from those protests. They expect them to have a power that is unrealistic. They expect them to have an influence that I think is unrealistic, and that's based on a miseducation about, for example, the civil rights movement and what led to change in the civil rights movement. However, the protests are useful and influential in terms of establishing a mood in the market. So
therein lies the power.
Therein lies the power.
Yeah.
That you have made it, and we've seen it like never before in my lifetime, that those of us who have been concerned about and interested in the Palestinian issue for decades, we're seeing what we never thought we'd see.
I mean, it's very important that we understand this and place actions and deeds accordingly, according to a lens that's clear.
Right.
You know, instead of just blindly chasing.
Right.
After.
Because I'm sorry to interrupt. Because otherwise you will think, if you don't understand. Again, I don't mean to like move away from the question, but it's connected in a way. If you don't understand the reality of the OCGFC, if you don't understand the reality of private sector power, then you might actually think that Europe got a conscience. You might actually think that Keir Starmer or Macron really genuinely feels really bad now about what's happening in Gaza. They don't care. They never did. They didn't care then. They don't care now.
It's not a change of heart.
There's no change of heart whatsoever.
Or developing a conscience suddenly.
No. They've been bought. Simple. They've been bought by GCC investment. They've been bought by GCC money. And they've been bought by the fact that the national OCGFC are on board with the GCC. They're on board with a new plan for the region. That's the only reason that you're seeing these people come out now in favor of a Palestinian state. That's the only reason. Zero other reasons. And that's the same reason why you see any change in the mainstream media narrative. Mm-hmm. So you have to understand what actually moves things in this world. And I mean, I know it's kind of a truism that everyone just sort of says offhandedly that you know, money makes the world go round, but it does, though, and you have to understand what that means. And in other words, you have to now, like I've talked about many times also, the democratization of corporate power, the democratization of private sector power, because at the end of the day, they are relying on your money. You're the one who made them rich. They're rich off of your money. Except in terms of financialization, and even in terms of financialization, there's something you can do about that because it's related to stock prices. Mm-hmm. And we already saw what they did with, what was that called? GameStop.
Right. We conspired together.
We've already seen that you can affect stock prices.
Yeah.
Even public boycotts, public shaming, and so forth, this can affect stock prices. So you have an ability to deal with even financialized capital. Mm-hmm. But you definitely have the ability to deal with the private sector, because they must be responsive to you.
Yes.
Anytime any group of people can pool their resources, pool their money, and put it together, that's a good thing. So, I mean, without further clarification of what you're talking about exactly, yes, absolutely. Any Muslim community. I mean, even if you talk about just like in America, say in the cities, in the states and in the cities where you have large Muslim populations, like say in Minnesota. In Detroit, in Michigan, in New York, Illinois, in Chicago, California, Texas, what have you. I don't know why you don't have sovereign wealth funds. Neighborhood sovereign wealth funds, call it that. Become a sovereign neighborhood through your own funding, through your own collection and pooling of your people's resources within your own community. A community sovereign wealth fund, why not?
Also, there's a lot of Gulf country investments and purchasing of property and even, I don't know, systems within the, you know.
This is the thing that I've talked about this many times. I've talked about it so many times that the Muslim community in America, the Muslim community in the West, needs to be building bridges with the Ummah, building bridges with the global Ummah, so that you won't be a part of a minority, of a marginalized minority in America, which is exactly what they want you to be, which is one of the reasons why they're teaching you to hate the Muslims around the world. They're teaching you to hate the Gulf. They're teaching you to hate the GCC, because the GCC is pouring money into countries in the West. They're pouring investment into countries all around the world. They're pouring money probably into your state, probably into your city, and you don't even know about it.
Yeah.
And you're probably angry about it because you're foolish. You've been taught to hate these people rather than allying with these people, which will give you power where you are. That will give you leverage where you are. if you're the one, and they should be coming to the Muslim communities, but they can't because all they ever hear from Western Muslims is that the Muslim leaders, the Muslim rulers in the Muslim world are all kuffar, they're all hypocrites, they're all bootlickers, they're all sellouts and what have you. You've alienated yourselves and you've alienated them from you. So now their money isn't even coming into your communities, but it could be if you reach out. You could actually get some of that Gulf investment into your own community and start working with them, start partnering with them, get some funding for your own startups and so forth. But they want you to be cut off, and you're foolishly falling for it, and patting yourselves on the back about how righteous you are. Meanwhile, you're doing nothing but keep your own community weak. And meanwhile, I'm sorry, but meanwhile, every Islamic organization that I've ever worked with in the United States, which was several, back when I was stuck in that country, every Muslim organization in America comes begging to the Gulf for money. There isn't a single one that doesn't get their money from the Gulf, mostly from Qatar, but also from Saudi Arabia, depending on which end of the spectrum they're on Islamically, if they're so-called Salafist, ish, or if they're Ikhwani. As we all know, the Ikhwanis run the Islamic organizations over there, so most of them are getting their money from Qatar. But you can also find from the Emirates, there's Ikhwanis in the Emirates that are not like publicly Ikhwani, in Kuwait and so on. They all go to the Gulf to get their money, because that's another thing. Even that, you all aren't even funding your own organizations enough, that they all end up having to go to the Gulf to beg for money. Your masjid, if you want your masjid built, you got to get money from Saudi Arabia or from Qatar or from Kuwait or what have you. You know, your Islamic schools, you have to go there to get funding. You need to build connections properly, Yani, because you end up going back to them anyway. They try to toxify every relationship, you know. They want to alienate you and keep you marginalized and keep you weak, keep you isolated, and you just fall for it. And I'm sorry, it's not a moral stand to weaken yourself. That is not a moral stand. If your moral stand makes you weak and makes you dependent on your enemies, that's not a moral stand. When you know how the world works, there's practical steps that you have to take, one of which is trying to attain economic leverage, economic power. Use money as a form of diplomacy once you get some. And I'm not telling you try and get rich. This isn't a get rich message. But like I'm talking about, like even with a community, even in your Muslim community where you are, or if you're a non-Muslim, in the community where you are, in America, and I've talked about this many times, about sufficiency zones. I've talked about, what do you call it, like the CHIT fund, where people cooperate together on a neighborhood basis. Everybody puts money in and someone takes money out once a month, a lump sum once a month. There are things that you can do to help build yourselves up practically that can give you some degree of autonomy, that can give you some degree of community level, neighborhood level sovereignty. There's not going to be. This is why the three objectives of Middle Nation is economic sovereignty, political independence, psychological decolonization. All of those three things are tied together. You really can't have one without the other. You can't have political independence if you don't have economic sovereignty. You can't have economic sovereignty if you don't have psychological decolonization, and you can't have political independence until you have psychological decolonization. You have to free your mind. But if you want to have political independence, the only way you can do that is by fortifying it with economic sovereignty. As long as your economy, if you're economically dependent, if you're economically subject, then you're never going to have political independence. And that's you can say on a micro level and on the macro level. You have to build up your economy. So even on a community level, you need to break some bad habits. If you want to impact large corporations, if you want to impact the multinational corporations, the OCGFC and so on, there's on a personal level, there's bad habits that you have to break, like mindless consumption. You need to break the mindless consumption, and you need to start trying to produce things yourselves on a community level. You know, don't follow brands. Don't buy when you don't need to buy. Don't spend. Make sure that every time you spend $1 or a pound or a euro or dinar or whatever the case may be, every time you spend anything from your pocket that you spent time earning, spent energy earning, had to work to earn, if you're going to give that to someone, make sure that you must do that. You know, and that is a conscious decision. Because like I've talked about many times, when you, especially in America, if you give money to a company, all you're doing is giving them a political donation to whatever that company is going to support, whatever political agenda that company is going to follow and pursue, and use their economic and political leverage to make sure that it happens. You are contributing to that. You are giving them power. When you give them money, you're giving them power and taking power away from yourself, unless you are making that a very conscious, intentional decision of what you will spend on and what you will not spend on. Or if you'll just save it, which is probably what you should do. Like I said, you should put it in a pool, in a community level sovereign wealth fund for your neighborhood, for your community, for your masjid. We're talking about you have to have some serious lifestyle changes.
Yes.
Serious long-term lifestyle changes, psychological changes, changes in your mentality, changes in your mindset, and changes on the community level.
Yes.
In terms of how you relate with people, how you deal with people, and so on. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is why, and I've talked about this before as well. People are always asking about what can be done, and because of the Western programming, everyone wants a quick solution. Everyone wants a quick fix. I want something that I can do right now that's going to change the world. That's not a thing. That's not how it works. It's like how they have taught you that whenever you have any pain in your body, you just take aspirin, you just take Tylenol, you just take Panadol, you take paracetamol, what have you, a painkiller to get rid of the problem, rather than identifying what was the source of the pain. Maybe the source of the pain is a long-term bad habit, a long-term bad habit that you are, or a bad diet, or what have you. And yes, you can take a pain pill at this moment, and that will get rid of the pain right now. But obviously it's going to come back, and it's going to just keep getting worse, and your addiction to the painkillers will get more and more. So you have to actually start looking at what's the sources of the pain, what's the sources of the injustice in your society, what's the sources of the inequality in your society, what's the source of the misery in your society, and then start working on the long-term changes, which again is part of why you have to understand that the OCGFC exists. Because you have to understand how real power works, what the real power dynamics are in your society. Otherwise, you might think that I'll be able to change my situation if I vote for red or I vote for blue. That's not going to be that's not how it works. That's not the source of the problem. The problem isn't that the wrong person is in office.
No.
The problem is that the office is owned. Whoever you elect, you're just deciding which politician to put in which company's pocket. That's what you're doing. You're picking something. A politician off the shelf and putting them in a company's pocket.
Yeah.
That's all you're doing. You're not putting them on your side. You're not taking them home. You're putting them in someone else's pocket. Because to a certain extent, and I'm sorry to tell you, but to a certain extent, your situation in the West is irreversible. The situation in America, the situation in Europe, the situation in the UK is largely irreversible. It is on a descent. And this is why, and it's not because I said so, the fact of it being in a descent is why the transition is happening to the Global South, why the Nationalistic GFC exists, and why they are pivoting to the Global South. Because you're already in descent, and now they are accelerating that descent because they're making their moves to prepare for the future, which does not include you in the West. So you have to look forward to a future in which your government is going to be completely hollowed out. The main role of government on the federal, and well, the federal government is, you're talking about America specifically, the federal government in America is going to become almost superfluous, and there's going to be state level authority, and that will mostly be manifested through security, so-called security, meaning militarized policing, meaning increased incarceration rates, increased also deportation, even if you're a citizen, cracking down. This is what you have to look forward to in the United States of America. I can't talk too much about different parts of Europe. Anyway, Europe is going to become a conflict zone. And they're facing deindustrialization at a rapid pace. In America, the situation is, in my opinion, irreversible. It's in a state of decline, and no one is doing anything except to accelerate that decline, including the people who are talking about America first.
Okay.
When they say America first, they must mean America must go down first. This is irreversible. So what you can do is try to prepare yourself and your family and your community for basically surviving and hopefully thriving amidst the collapse
Yeah.
of your system. Finding, like I say, sort of trying to found and create
Your
sufficiency zones in your own neighborhood, in your own community, where you don't have to rely.
your own networks, your own little ecosystem.
Yeah, you have to create your own ecosystems.
Yeah.
Really, really think about it like, and I don't mean to sound like one of those, like Armageddon preppers or something like that, but you have to prepare for economic collapse. And I'm not necessarily even saying that this is going to be something that's going to happen again, sort of in one big dramatic, the stock market crash and what have you. But you're on this trajectory. You're on a rapid downward trajectory, and things are going to get very bad. So there's not anything that you can do, and I'm sorry to be very blunt about this, there isn't anything you can do that will reverse that. All you can do is to try to prepare for the inevitability of what the conditions are going to be like once that fully plays out.